It's not getting it.
But like shortly after I got there, I get pulled into the admin office by a bunch of chiefs, and I'm crapping my pants because I'm like, oh, what did I do? Like, there's all these chiefs around me. I'm just some E2 who doesn't even know how to like have military bearing at all. Just get pulled into this office, and I'm just like, what happened? And they tell me that your dad's had a myocardial infarction, which heart attack, yeah. So I'm like, well, what's going on? They're like, well, you got to go to the chapel, go talk to him. And I'm walking towards the chapel. Well, this is the first time I'd ever left, like we call it the ship, the building, by myself. I had to like flag fold this chit, put it in my left breast pocket, walk down the street to the chapel by myself, where everybody's just like this. Like, everybody's just scared out of their minds. I mean, that's boot camp. It's just a psychological warfare thing. Like, somebody's going to mess with you. There's just no way you're getting there all the way to the chapel without it. So colors goes off as I'm walking to the chapel, obviously. So I don't know what to do. I just freeze. That's it. Then this BMW pulls up, just goes, hey jackass, you're supposed to salute. BMW. And I should have known that. I was like, that's probably the CO of the base. I'm just like a total dude. But no, I called him, and I didn't talk to him because it just happened, obviously. I talked to my mom, and she was just, like, hey, he's doing okay, just don't come home, don't do anything like that. It's just going to set you back in time. Just stay there. And so I stayed there. It's just one of those things that you can't control.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that, they're not going to be here forever. I mean, I grew up at a funeral home, like a family funeral home. So we saw this all day, every day.
You were diggers.
Yeah, basically.
My golf player had to have a funeral director, and that's what they called him, digger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my whole family has done it, and,
You have a sense of humor to be a digger, don't you?
I think so. Probably a very odd and dark sense of humor, but hey, it's still a sense of humor, nonetheless.
Hey, it's a money-making sense of humor.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm about to say everybody's born and everybody dies.
It's economy proof too.
I mean,
for sure.
You just have to be aware of that, with your dad. I mean, we just played golf yesterday.
Cool.
Went up to hometown. They moved around all over the place while I was in the Navy. They were in Texas, Topeka. Just moved home last year, and it's just nice to have them back. And I'm home. And
were they back in Chillicothe?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're back in Chillicothe. I do have one funny story though, that involves Ben's dad.
Oh shit.
And my dad. So when you're a kid and you're kind of at your house, and you're just young enough to where you just don't understand the scope of things. Where like I used to think like I would walk out. My house is on the main street of Chillicothe, and so I'd walk to the back alley and we'd ride our bikes around there and stuff. But my parents would just like kind of let us go, but they'd freak out if I like ran off.
Right.
So I ran off because I didn't know. Because I didn't know. Like I didn't know what was at the courthouse. Like that was the last thing I could see at the alley. I figured that's got to be the end of the world. I got to see what's over there. So I just walk off. It's probably 3 or 4. I don't know.
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm walking down the street. Ben's dad pulls up in his MG Midget.
Yeah.
Like convertible.
Awesome.
And I'm just walking down the street. I don't know what I was doing, obviously. But I'm walking down the street and he recognized me, knew who I was. He knew I was probably, obviously not supposed to be there by myself.
Out of bounds.
Yeah, exactly. So he goes, hey, little Lindley, hey, can I give you a ride home? And I just was like, I don't talk to strangers. Just like, and I knew him. I mean, like, that was my out. Yeah, I think I was grounded for like a year after that. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know. I guess it puts it in perspective a little bit more.
Yeah.
I was gone for 5 years. I missed a lot of stuff, and whenever I left, he was relatively, we'll say, a lot healthier. I mean, like now it's, he's diabetic. It's getting a little bit more advanced, and you just notice it. And you don't see somebody for that long. You notice the changes a lot, and it's like in the afternoon, he's like just tired, and you're just, you know, he has to go help his dad, who's 89, and he's in town too, so they rotate weekends specifically with his brother and go back and forth and take care of him because he has Alzheimer's.
Cool.
And it's, yeah, I mean, I get to see 2 generations of what is going to happen to me, more than likely, for sure. And I just, you know, I'd be lucky to have people around, you know, like that whenever I'm that age. I mean, it's sad in a way, but it's just an eventuality. It's nice to be around either way.
I want to pick a quick story in here.
Wait, before you do that, we haven't heard from Teeman yet.
Real quick, this is a quick, because it refers to him.
Okay.
Let me go through it. When the Red Sox were playing the Yankees, they were down 3-1 in 2004. They were interviewing a New York pundit and a Boston pundit. And the question to the Boston pundit was, what will happen in New England? What would be the effect in New England if the Red Sox were to beat the Yankees and finally get all the win the World Series? And Chauncey sat there for a minute, he goes, death. The guy goes, death? What are you talking about? So you realize how many old codgers are sitting there waiting for the Red Sox to win? And true story, they had a 20% increase in death in the next year after. People can finally die because the Red Sox finally won the World Series. All right, that's it.
That's great.
I'm Mr. Teeman. He's got some interesting stories too.
Well, yeah, and listening to all of you, it's I'm from a different time and a different era. My dad was in World War II, came back home, got married, and they decided to have me 7 months after they got married. Very interesting timing there, I always thought. But you know, and it's we were very dysfunctional. No, we weren't very close. And he was a mean-spirited human being. But all that said, and the spankings and the whippings, which by the way I deserved all of them, so did all of us in our family. My dad owned a beer joint, and he taught me how to keep the books in the beer joint. He taught me how to clean that beer joint up and get it ready for business every day. I had to go to school. I got a little money for doing that. Back then, a little money was a quarter.
Right.
So, but it was that entrepreneurial, that it's about work and earning money, and I'll never forget that. And then I had my own lawnmower route where I was mowing lawns, and I was also a window washer. Right, several people in town were. I had to basically make it myself. I mean, there was no handouts. There was no, here's son, here's money for your, whatever it is. And which made me appreciate the fact of earning money at a very, very, very young age. But, and I mean this in the sincerest way, but in the loving way, he was a terrible parent. They were never home. They were always in the beer joint. And so the 4 kids raised ourselves. Now, with all that negative being said, when we moved to Kansas City, sold the beer joints, I had a job, always had a job, always had a nice car. And, but when you had a job and a car and you're 16 and a half, 17 years old, you do one other thing. You're out every night, partying. And I'll never forget, I came home one night, I was 17 years old, had a phony ID, so I was going into all the adult clubs. Came home, and the key to the house no longer worked.
Oh.
And there was a little stack of clothes, about that many, sitting on the front stoop of the house, of the porch, and a little note attached to it, you'll never be a man until you get out on your own. Go. I was not welcome at home. Now, I left, and I was pissed. And I remember I carried that grudge till I decided to get married, which was about 3 years later, and we invited him to the wedding. We still weren't close. Went through that time, we'd go down to the family meetings and the little get-togethers and the parties in my home. By that time, they'd moved back to my hometown. And I always liked the one story when I decided to tell them I was getting a divorce. Now, we're from the country, southern Missouri, and all Catholic community, beer joints. So just kind of set this up. My wife was a very, very attractive young lady. I definitely had married up. But we decided to split up and get away. And I remember when I told my parents, I took them aside and said, look, I think it's only fair that I should let you guys know we're getting a divorce. And not my dad, but it was you could see in his eyes, but my mom looked at me and goes, are you queer or something? And I remember I looked at her and I went, well, Mom, if I am, I'm not going to tell you. So, which I always wanted her to go, oh shit, maybe he is. But the whole point of that was that dysfunctional side of our families, there was never anything positive being said in that sense. Although, you got to remember all those things my dad taught me. He taught me how to fish, he taught me how to hunt, he taught me how to skin squirrels, rabbits. I could do all that stuff and was very proficient in all those things. Fast forward, I had moved to Houston and got a great job. Always had a great job. And I decided to start coming back home when I was about 35, 40 years old, somewhere in that range. And I'd forgotten all the bad stuff. And every time I'd see my dad, before I'd leave, I'd walk up and I'd give him a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. Well, I guarantee you, my dad was never used to being kissed on the cheek by any man. And I kind of did it for two reasons. I'll never forget the queer remark, and I just wanted to let him know I still loved him. After all that stuff, I still loved him. And every time I would see them, I'd always let him know when I'd leave, I love you. I'd give him a big hug and a big kiss on the cheek. When he passed away, I was at his bedside, and the last thing I did after he passed was I kissed him on the cheek. I love my dad. I always will. I'm kind of welling up a little bit. He was a mean-spirited human being, but God, without him, I wouldn't even, I'd be just like some of these street bums down here rolling around in the corner begging for dimes. He taught me very, very valuable lessons.
That's the common theme among all of us.
It sounds like it. Anonymous female. You got some
Oh,
dad-
I was just listening to the guys' dad's conversations.
Yeah,
We need a female
Give
perspective.
any 2 cents on your dad?
Well, you know, when I was growing up, my dad worked second shift, so I didn't see him a lot. And when we did, it was always, you know, he was much more strict than my mom was. You know, and even now he's that way. But, I mean, through my teenage years, we didn't get along well. And after I had my first child, we still didn't get along well. And it really wasn't until he got sick and almost died that it was kind of like, okay, this is silly. You know, he's my dad. And at one point he came to me and said, I don't know why we don't get along and we really need to talk. So we did, and now, you know, we have a really good relationship. I mean, it's not great, but he tells me things that he doesn't tell my brother, and I talk to him like an adult, and sometimes I treat him like he's my child, but you know, it happens.
Yeah, all of the
I
medical
tell-
decisions are
I tell my dad the truth. I tell him whether he wants to hear it or not, he needs to hear it, and he knows he does. So we'll talk about it, and you know, he's like, I know. But every time he has to go to the hospital, my dad has congestive heart failure. They always, when I'm there, they always refer the nurses to me. The nurses will be like, do you have any questions? Nope, I'm good. So it's an
How old is he
interesting
now?
thing. He will be, let's see, he will be 66 the 13th of July.
That's young.
He's a kid.
Yeah.
The old fought.
But he, you know, he's got the congestive heart failure and he's diabetic, so it's always a very. A friend of ours, you know, is in the hospital, and when I was on my way in, I was immediately like, I knew where I needed to be, I knew what was going on, I knew why the nurse was coming in, and I was like, I cannot tell I spend way too much time in hospitals. I mean, it was just. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, I think that there are some lessons I've learned by how strict he was when I was growing up, and just seeing, you know, he's a very quiet man.
Yeah.
You know, very quiet. It's very rare that you can get him to have a conversation. And when he does, though, it's never just bullshit. It's always something real. So it's nice when we can do that.
which is actually, for those of you who don't know the anonymous female, well, that's her style as well. She never, if you notice, has frivolous conversation. She actually always has something pretty real to say, and she will tell you the truth whether you want to know it or not. And,
Why are you looking at Chris?
There's a couple people that at this table that I'm like that with.
you know, you get the truth,
Which makes it more fun.
And it's
doesn't it?
appreciated.
Yeah.
I don't think it's always appreciated,
No,
but it always comes from
The heart.
a good place.
That's
It's
why it's
never mean.
appreciated.
And we don't always agree, but we always.
Well, yeah,
we-
you don't have to, but I'm kind of I have come to know that I am definitely like a mama bear to everybody I know.
Yes, I agree.
So.
I agree.
Well, thanks, Mama Bear.
Before we get off of today's topic and get on to some lighter fare, does anybody have anything else that they want to say about their dads?
I think one thing that's interesting that everybody said in some ways was that I think you learn a lot by figuring out and admiring as you get older what their great qualities were. My dad always took care of our family very well, always worked hard. I mean, unquestionably loved my mom, and the kids always understood that. And then you also learn the things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes those are just as important.
I think that I got from most of our conversations is that our fathers really prepared us for life in a lot of different
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The good and the bad.
Yeah.
Well,
They really did a good job of throwing some of the hard shit at us every once in a while that we needed to survive in life.
The older you get, what you thought was bad was younger, and what you disliked and all those things will soon dissipate.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you'll look for the traits and the positive things, especially as your fathers get older and older. You kind of go, you know, because we learn life lessons ourselves, and I think there's a sense of maturity that just comes along with getting, unfortunately, older. But yeah, it's a great lesson. I think we've all had the same.
You've been quieter than most, and I understand why. But
You know, I just, I don't know, you know, I miss my dad, and I hope to be someone that he'd be proud of, and I think I'm on my way. I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think you're already there.
I think we're all already there, and that's the cool thing about it.
So how about we toast real quick to our dads?
Yeah, I agree.
to the Prodigal Sons.
To the Prodigal Sons.